Let's talk about delegation. Nobody operates individually anymore, and you can accomplish a lot more when you have help. However, most people delegate very poorly. They treat delegation as dumping. I don't have time to do this, you take care of it. And then they micromanage, and it's just a disaster. The first thing, if you're going to delegate something to a subordinate, is you grant them authority with responsibility. You don't tell somebody, go take care of this, but if you need to spend any money, you've got to come back to me for approval. That's not empowering them. That's telling them you don't trust them. If I trust you enough to do the work, I trust you enough to give you the resources and the budget and the time and whatever else you need to get it done. You give them the whole package. The other thing is delegate, but always do the ugliest job yourself. So when we need to vacuum the lab before a demo, I bring in the vacuum cleaner and I vacuum it. All right? Do the dirtiest job yourself so it's very clear that you're willing to still get the dirt on your hands. Treat your people well. People are the greatest resource, and if you are fortunate enough to have people who report to you, treat them with dignity, respect, and, to sound a little bit corny, the kind of love that they should have from someone who cares about them and their professional development. And for crying out loud, staff and secretaries are your lifeline. Right? If you don't think you should treat them well because it's a decent thing to do, at least treat them well, because if you don't, they will get you. Right? And they will get you good, and you will deserve it, and I will applaud them. Am I giving a talk on time management with Alf Weaver in the audience? Where is Alf? There he is. That's like talking about surviving the Jonestown flood if Noah's in the audience. One of the things that Alf Weaver taught me is, whether it's to a colleague or to a subordinate, if you want to get something done, you cannot be vague. And he said, you give somebody a specific thing to do, a specific date and time. Thursday is not a specific time. Thursday at 3:22 gets somebody's attention. And you give them a specific penalty or reward that will happen if that deadline for that thing is not met. And then he paused and he said, and remember, the penalty or reward has to be for them, not you. Right? I will be screwed over if you don't meet that deadline. Oh, bummer. Right? This is an important point to not get wrong. Challenge people. I've been told that one of the tricks is you delegate until they complain. I don't know about until they complain, but what I've found is that underdelegation is a problem. People are usually yearning for the opportunity to do more. They want to be challenged. They want to prove to you and themselves they can be more capable, so let them. Communication has to be clear. So many times people get upset with their bosses because there's a misunderstanding, and particularly in a time of email, it's so easy to communicate via email. Even if you've had a face-to-face conversation, send a 2-line email just to be specific afterwards. And it's not like we're trying to be all lawyer-like. It's just that, as Judge Wapner said, get it in writing, if you remember the People's Court. And Judge Wapner said, if there isn't a problem, it's not a problem. It didn't take you much time. But if there ever is a problem, well, wait a second, there won't be a problem because there's a written record. And that's the magic. There won't be a confusion because you can't disagree about the written word. Don't give people how you want them to do it. Tell them what you want them to do. Give them objectives, not procedures. Let them surprise you with a way of solving a problem you would never have imagined. Sometimes those solutions are mind-blowing, good or bad. But they're really much more fun than just having them do it the way you would have done it. And you know what? If you're in a university, your job should be to have people smarter than you, i.e. your students, and they will come up with stuff you would never have thought of. The other thing is, tell people the relative importance of each task. I meet so many people who say, oh, my boss is an ogre. They gave me 5 things to do. I'm like, well, did they tell you which one was the most important? Oh, yeah. I guess I could ask that. Knowing that if you have 5 things, which are the ones to get done is really important, because if you're flying blind, you got a 20% chance of getting them done in the right order. And delegation can never be done too young. Does everyone see the difference in the 2 pictures? This is my daughter, Chloe. I love her to death, but I want her to grow up to be a wonderful person, and I know the sooner she holds her own bottle, the better. Sociology, beware upward delegation. Sometimes you try to delegate and people try to hand it back to you. One of the best things I ever saw was someone who had a secretary trying to say, I can't do this, you'll have to take it back. And he just put his hands behind his back and took a step backwards. And then he waited. And then eventually the secretary said, or maybe I could find this other solution. And he said, that's wonderful. I'm so proud you thought of that. All right? It was an elegant gesture. Reinforced behavior won't be repeated. One of my favorite stories in the 1 Minute Manager is he talks about, did you ever wonder how they got the killer whales to jump through the hoop? If they did it like modern American office managers, they would yell at the killer whale, jump through the hoop! And then every time the killer whale didn't jump through the hoop, they'd hit it with a stick. Right? I mean, this is how we train people in the office place. Read the book if you want to see how they actually do it, because I'm curious. I mean, I know now, but it's really cool how they get them to do it. So reinforced behavior won't repeated. When people do things that you like, praise them and thank them. That's worth more than any amount of monetary reward or a little plaque. People really like to just be told straight up, thank you, I really appreciate that you did a good job. The other thing is that if you don't want things delegated back up to you, don't learn how to do them. I take great pride. I don't know how to run photocopiers and fax machines, and I ain't going to learn. Right? That's certainly how I'm not going to spend my remaining time. Meetings. The average executive spends more than 40% of his or her time in a meeting. My advice is when you have a meeting, lock the door, unplug the phone, and take everybody's BlackBerries. Because if it's worth our time, it's worth our time. If it's not worth our time, it's not worth our time. But I don't have any interest in being in a room with 6 people who are all half there, because that's very inefficient. I don't think meetings should ever last more than an hour, with very rare exception. And I think that there should be an agenda. I got into a great habit a couple of years ago when I just started saying, if there's no agenda, I won't attend. And the great thing about that is whoever called the meeting had to actually think before they showed up about why we were supposed to be there, because otherwise it's like, well, why are we here? Because we had a meeting. It's on all of our calendars. It's just a classic Dilbert moment. So most important thing about meetings, and again, this comes from the 1 Minute Manager, 1 minute minutes. At the end of a meeting, somebody has to have been assigned the scribe, and they write down in 1 minute or less what decisions got made and who is responsible for what by when, and then they email it out to everybody. Because if you don't do that, you have your next weekly meeting next week, and you all sit around going, now who was going to do this? Right? It's very inefficient. And it's so fast to just do these 1 minute minutes. Here's a big email trick. If you want to get something done, do not send the email to 5 people. Hey, could somebody take care of this? Every one of those 5 recipients is thinking one and only one thing. I deleted it first. Right? So the other 4 people will take care of this. I don't have to. So you send it to one and only one person. But if you really want it to be done, send it to somebody who can do it. Tell them what, again, Alf Weaver, specific thing, specific time. And then the penalty can be more subtle, like you just CC their boss. All right? And the other thing, and I've had to teach, I had this conversation with every student in my entire career, because they send email, and then they just wait for the person to respond. And I say, if the person has not responded within 48 hours, it's okay to nag them. And the reason it's okay to nag them, because if they haven't responded within 48 hours, the chance that they are ever going to respond is 0. I mean, maybe not 0, maybe that small. But in my experience, if people don't respond to you within 48 hours, you'll probably never hear from them, so just start nagging them. Let's talk about the care and feeding of bosses. There's a phrase, managing from beneath. Because we all know that all bosses are idiots. That's certainly the expression, you know, the sense I've gotten from everybody who has a boss. When you have a boss, write things down. Do that clear communication thing. Ask them, when is our next meeting? What do you want me to have done by then? So you've got sort of a contract. Who can I turn to for help besides you, because I don't want to bother you? And remember, your boss wants a result, not an excuse. General advice on vacations. Phone callers should get 2 options. The first one is, when you're on vacation, the first option is, contact John Smith, not me. I'm out of the office, but this person can help you now if it's urgent. Or call back when I'm back. Why? Because you don't want to come back to a long sequence of phone messages saying, you know, hey, Randy, can you help me get care of this? And then you call them back, and, you know, you've been on vacation for a week. They already solved it. And the other thing is that it's not a vacation if you're reading email. All right? Trust me on that. It's not a vacation if you're reading email. I can stay in my house all weekend and not read email, and it's a vacation. But if I go to Hawaii and I've got a BlackBerry, I'm not on vacation. And I know this. When I got married, my wife and I got married, we left our reception in a hot air balloon, which did not have wireless on it. And Dean Jim Morris at the time, we took a month-long honeymoon, which was great, but not really long enough. And Jim Morris said, and I said, I'm not going to be reachable for a month. And Jim said, that's not acceptable. I said, what do you mean it's not acceptable? He said, well, I pay you. So that's the not acceptable part. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, so there has to be a way to reach me. And he said, yes. I said, okay. So if you called my office, there would be a phone answering machine message that said, hi, this is Randy, I'm on vacation. I waited till 39 to get married, and so we're going for a month. And I hope you don't have a problem with that. But apparently my boss does, so he says I have to be reachable. So here's how you can reach me. My wife's parents live in blah, blah, blah town. Here's their names. If you call directory assistance, you can get their number. And then if you can convince my new in-laws that your emergency merits interrupting their only daughter's honeymoon, they have our number.